Every nation builds its future at its centers of learning. For Kerala too, investment in education has been a developmental constant. After a journey on the well-trodden path of conventional education, Kerala is today poised for a great leap into the rarefied realm of digital learning. For the state, this is a quantum leap into the digital future. At an institutional level, this is a transformative process from the triple ITMK, a standalone Institute of Information Technology Education established in 2000, to a full-fledged digital university. Besides pursuing academics, the triple ITMK has been concentrating on applied research and consultancy projects. Many of the state's key e-governance projects were developed by triple ITMK. The establishment of the Kerala University of Digital Science, Innovation and Technology marks a complete makeover of triple ITMK into a futuristic institution of higher learning and a global benchmark in digital technologies and management. Located in a 10-acre campus at the Tectonic on the National Highway 66 in Thiruvananthapuram, the university will provide education to 1,200 residential scholars at the campus and numerous technologically linked learners outside. The Kerala University of Digital Science, Innovation and Technology is starting out with 5 schools of knowledge, namely School of Computer Science and Engineering, School of Digital Sciences, School of Electronic Systems and Automation, School of Informatics and School of Digital Humanities and Liberal Arts, covering science, technology and humanities dimensions of the digital world. Each school would offer master-level programs in computer science, informatics, applied electronics and humanities, with various specializations of the industries 4.0. Classrooms with top-of-the-line facilities are ready, and a well-stacked library is in the making. The faculty members have been carefully chosen based on their domain expertise. The Digital University campus is already humming with academic activities. The university has plans to establish specialized centers in areas such as blockchain, artificial intelligence and machine learning, robotics, cybersecurity, big data analytics, biocomputing, geospatial analytics, e-governance, etc., in collaboration with leading international academic, research and industry bodies. With the digital university, all geared to nurture talent in cutting-edge areas of digital technologies, Kerala moves a step closer to realizing its dream of emerging as a knowledge economy in the near future. Let's step into a Kerala that is future perfect digitally.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Career Counseling series brought to you by the Hindu Education Plus in partnership with Digital University Kerala. My name is Anu Kripa and I'll be your moderator this evening. Today, we're having a conversation about emerging career opportunities in the digital age. The word digital is pretty ubiquitous now. We kind of throw it around. We have digital banking, digital media, digital marketing, digital art, digital finance, digital education. We use it a lot, right? And pretty generically. And also coming on the heels of months of quarantine lockdown because of a pandemic, the workforce all over the world in almost every industry has had to go digital in some way or the other. While it's easy enough to understand careers in the digital age in a general way, we know what we're talking about when we just use the word digital and throw it around. What does it really mean? What are the specific changes that have happened across industries that have made all industries more digital? What career opportunities have risen up in the last decade because of digitalization of work? Apart from digital marketing, digital media, the usual kind of digital career things that we all know about. We say digital, you have a career in some digital field, the first thing we think of is software engineering, digital marketing, or digital media. That's it, right? Those are the things that come first to the mind. We probably just think of a couple of things. We'll spend the next hour or so pushing those boundaries a little bit about what we know and understand as digital careers. What is it in digital work, in digital careers that we don't know about, but there's this entire ocean of work that exists out there. And that's what we're going to try and do today. And how can students be prepared for the changes that are on the horizon in the workplace, and maybe some not on the horizon, they're very much at the doorstep, we just don't know about them yet. So let's find out. I'll give you an example. I think one of our panelists joining today, Shruti George, is a great example of things that we might not know are out there in the digital work industry. As the Vice President of Strategic Innovation Platforms at Avery Dennison, she leads the sustainability and innovation charge there. Avery Dennison is the world's largest RFID manufacturer. Now, at first look, it's easy to say, okay, Avery Dennison, what do they do? Okay, labels, packaging, right? That's the first thing that if you had to describe it in one word, they're working in material sciences. Maybe not necessarily the first company you think of when you say digital, but Shruti George works at the frontier of digital innovation at Avery Dennison. And she'll tell us a little bit more about her work, what they do there, and kind of breaking some of these misconceptions about digital work in a bit. But before we hear from her, we'll hear from Dr. Saji Gopinath. Dr. Gopinath served at IIM Kozhikode for 17 years as Professor, Dean of Development, and Dean of Academics. He was associated with IIM Kozhikode ever since its inception in '97 and has played a pivotal role in making that campus one of the top 5 institutions in the country. His research areas of project management, finance, and operations management have been published in top journals and are highly cited in scholarly circles. Dr. Gopinath currently heads Kerala University of Digital Sciences, Innovation and Technology. Digital University Kerala aims to be the prime mover of knowledge revolution in this country by focusing on research and education in science, technology, and humanities relevant to the digital work world. So, Dr. Gopinath, I'll kind of throw it to you. Could you maybe start us off by setting the stage for us on the changes that we're seeing in the industry and its implications on career opportunities?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Anukripa, and good evening to all. It's a privilege to speak to all of you, specifically at a time when, as Anukripa has rightly pointed out, there is a huge wave of digital changes happening all across the world. So we have seen many technologies coming around us across the period, but the reason why we today speak about looking at this as a new age or a digital age per se is because I believe there are some fundamental changes which is happening around us. And that fundamental changes are some things which I believe we need to be cognizant about, especially when we are planning our career and the type of programs which we do, the type of jobs we take, etc. So I will share a very small PPT on some of these pointers, and then we will go off to the discussions. So we know that we speak about a new normal today, because there's quite a bit of disruption which has happened. That disruption is primarily being attributed to the COVID, but even before COVID, we have seen the changes happening around. In fact, Anikrupa mentioned about the digital payment, which has become very popular, especially in India when the demonetization happened. The way we actually shifted to e-payment was so swift. And we have also seen in very many conventional areas, we are seeing that the technology is speaking a different type of inputs. And that all lead to a new normal. And this is actually being driven by some changes which is happening, the major tectonic shifts, I'll say, happening in the global and in the national and regional levels. That obviously brings challenges. You have seen companies going out of business, the products going out of businesses, especially when the convergence happened in some context. But at the same time, it also brings about a huge amount of transformation and the opportunities along with that. And that, how do you prepare for that, and what type of strategies for excellence is something which we need to really debate and discuss on. Now, even before this pandemic, there was primarily a labor shortage which happened across the world, especially in the developed world. If you look at the data from US, the incremental workforce during the last 20 years, maybe 2000 onwards, is actually declining. At the same time, the countries like India, which actually are becoming much more younger, is actually providing a huge opportunity per se. I'm sure that we generally speak about this demographic dividend quite often, but in another way, we can say that if we can really make use of our population, our youth, then we can actually say that almost 1 out of every 4 jobs created in 2030s and 2040s will be for an Indian. Now, this was basically the pre-pandemic situation. Now, when you come to the post-pandemic situation, there were some other big changes which happened. And I think that is a bigger shift which has happened. If you look at the history, before the Industrial Revolution, most of the production happened in small houses, household industry level passage. And whatever excess is there, you actually ship to one place to another place. The items used to ship from one place to another place. The last century, and maybe perhaps part of 19th century, see a big shift. You see mass production companies coming. The mobility become very easy. People can move from one area to other area. The globalization has happened at that point of time. And that's basically where you have seen industrial cities getting developed across the world. You have seen a large number of newer type of jobs that's happening in the industrial world. Now, during the pandemic and even before the pandemic, we see some big change happening. The pandemic actually limited our mobility, but more importantly, there are socio-political changes. Now, we heard about Brexit, we heard about Niakat in the Middle East region, we have heard about some of the nationalist movement which is happening. And we also are very, very sensitive about sustainability and climate change, which also limit our mobility, because we are today speaking about carbon neutral production, carbon neutral travel, and things like that. So again, we are going back to the world where the world is going to be like what it was maybe 200 years back, where the production comes to in shorter places per se. But the biggest difference is that when we are moving from this big to small, and small is the efficiency in the small is where the technology is actually bringing in quite a bit, thanks to the internet, thanks to the communication technologies. And today we also speak about Industry 4.0 technologies, which brings up quite a bit of elements to the efficiency at a small format. We also see that rather than people moving, their work can move. In fact, when Anikrupa said that perhaps it is not at the horizon but at the doorstep, I think it's true, because today at your doorstep you can actually do a job in another part of the world, and that type of remote gig work is actually going to be a major thing as such. And predictions are that from a current level, almost 6 times growth is happening in these sort of freelance jobs per se. So this is one key shift which happened. The second shift is that throughout our history, we see that the development happened with some level of some technology. And that technology is primary technology around which so many smaller technologies comes, but some technology takes the major role. And that's what we call as the industrial revolutions. So it was a textile locomotive, electricity. These were the technologies which was driving the first wave of industrial revolution. The second wave of industrial revolution, which is what benefits of which even today we are reaping, is primarily been driven by automobiles. And related to that, you have the oil industry coming in, newer jobs coming in the oil economy. You have seen large industry houses coming in. The part of the last century, we have seen the information technology or the computer technology becoming key. And today, if somebody is asked to look at the large companies coming to your mind, invariably names comes to your mind are companies which are from the computer or domain, right? Be it Amazon or be it Google or be it Microsoft. Those are the names which comes to us. We may not come to an automobile company, generally comes to our mind today, because that shift has happened. And next stage is primarily where we are speaking about the newer set of changes in the industry, where the machines are going to talk to each other, the products are going to talk to each other. So you will see digital technologies, including artificial intelligence, IoT, data analytics, blockchains. These are going to be the thing. Now, many of these are not new. Say, for example, AI was there in vogue for quite some time. You have used robots in many of our machine shops. But the biggest difference is that from a very special purpose robots, you are now speaking about general purpose robots. Just like what happened in computers, right? When computers are doing only computing, people are not using it much. But when the computers do everything along with computing, maybe it sings, it connects you to a movie, it actually give you connect with others on an email, everything when computers start doing, we all started adopting it. Similar thing is going to happen in the context of AI. And you also have software boards, which also is going to replace many of the cognitive jobs, which currently, especially lower end cognitive jobs, are getting replaced by that. Similar case with the data. Huge volumes of data are coming in our context, and we, just like oil gave an economy in the last, data is going to drive the economy in the future as such. The next stage, and that's basically where Shruti will also be speaking, I believe, is on the material space technology, which is going to be the next key things as such, bio. Now, this together we call this world where digital, physical, and biological world coming together. That's what we call as generally fourth industrial revolution of the digital age per se. Now, when you look at this age, it also see how the societal transformation happens. The agriculture world, we are primarily looking at agriculture products and industrial products per se. From that, information products, and today we speak more about knowledge products. And interesting thing, and that's something which I think many times we miss, is that this is not limited only to computers or electronics. It's applicable to different contexts. Say, for example, many of our conventional sectors are getting transformed in that. Now, Mr. Rudy will be speaking about RFID, because that's the world's largest RFID manufacturer, and we generally think about RFID in materials tracking, etc. But one project which Digital University has initiated is, in fact, India's one of the largest projects, is to put RFID in 1.8 million cattle, and we have started. And this cattle's breeding management will be done through this. So this is actually done at the most ground level assets, grassroots level assets. Primarily, how do we actually increase the milk production without really adding the cattle, but better breed management? If you can have better traceability of the cattle, you can do that. So similar applications are happening in different levels per se. So you are seeing that the impact of digital technologies or exponential technologies, which we see, which solves very, very large problems, is the essence of the knowledge economy per se. But from a career point of view, this also brings in a lot of newer type of jobs. And that many studies have suggested that many of our current jobs said that almost around 85 million jobs of today is going to vanish, and you will be replaced by 97 million jobs. Even today, when we look at many of the jobs which we are speaking about, digital marketing expert or data analyst, these jobs were not there 5 years back. These jobs all came very, very new. So you see that a large number of newer type of jobs, some of the names even which we may not know, are going to evolve in the days to come. And we need to be prepared for that. Now let us come to Indian story. And I believe that a large number of you are attending from India. The Indian story is is actually very, very interesting today. At one end, just before the pandemic, our honorable Prime Minister gave us as a challenge to convert India into a 5 trillion economy at a time when India was around 2.6 trillion as such. Now, when you want to leapfrog into 5 trillion economy in 5 years' time, from almost double the economy, you need to grow at around 14%. And we were growing at around 7% or something like at that point of time, which means there is an accelerated growth which is required. And that is the time in which I think we are speaking about, where the government has created infrastructure, government has created schemes, and we are actually looking at a huge accelerated growth where from conventional factor-based economy, where we look at land, labor, things which drives the economy, we move into more of an innovation-driven economy. And that innovation-driven economy connected with the digital changes happening in the world is actually going to create a large number of jobs in the days to come. The McKinsey report says that there is going to be an addition of 90 million jobs in the next 7 years' time. It's interesting to note that only 5 million jobs added in the last 10 years in 2010-20. So you are basically speaking about a huge jump in the type of jobs. Not necessarily all these jobs are at the executive level, but these are all non-farm jobs. These are not agriculture jobs, and this can actually happen in the newer sectors per se, including remote gig type of jobs. And some of the sectors which is growing also is an interesting thing. 3 years back, in 2020, Indian IT industry was only around $190 billion. 2 years, we actually crossed $227 billion now. With 75% exports, it's actually being said that by next 3 years, we will almost become $350 billion. So almost 50% more. And remember, today we have close to half a crore or 50 million people, 5 million people working in this space. And another 50% growth means you see a large number of jobs coming in the IT sector alone. Even at the time of pandemic, last year, close to around 4.5 lakh jobs or 450,000 jobs actually got created in IT sector alone. When I say IT sector, does not mean that it is on the tech side, but it also on the digital transformation side. The similar is the case with another area, which is on electronics. And when machines are going to speak to each other, you really require devices like IoT, your devices on that context of that. And the government has actually put a very, very ambitious target of making Indian self-reliance on electronics a key priority. From a $75 billion today, it is expected that in the next 3 to 5 years, we reach around $300 billion. Again, a huge growth potential area is there. But along with that, you have other sectors, whether it is automotive, consumer, utilities, logistics, media, healthcare, almost every area, digital is going to be the strategic enabler. The reason why we speak about digital age is because of that. This is something which is going to be ubiquitous. It is going to be the one which is going to be a part of transformation in almost every area per se. And that leads that even you must have done a BSc in, let's say, geology or BSc in geography. You can actually look at how you transform yourself into a geospatial analyst. You must have done a course in physics. You can actually look at how do you become a computational physicist, or you are a person in chemistry. You can actually look at how do you convert yourself into a computational drug designer or a computational material scientist, or you must have done courses in management or BBA or BCom. How do you actually translate yourself into the digital accounting or digital management space? So almost every area, not technology area, actually is getting transformed, use the digital technologies per se. And that leads to a lot of short-term and long-term transformations happening in that process. The digital transformation is actually a reality. You go to a very rural area, you see even there a person may be using a Google Pay or a Paytm for the transformation. So we have seen how fast it has gone down to almost every area per se. In addition to that, the communication infrastructure, the BharatNet, the large fiber network which is coming, the 5G rollout which is going to happen, all these are going to make there is a big leap of change in the digital transformation in the country per se. Be it the communication technology, be it the social media and new channels of digital production. See, sometime back I said that we are moving from a large to a small. Earlier, if you wanted to make a movie, it has to be done through a huge movie house. Today, if you have the talent, and you can actually create your movie and you can have your own YouTube channel. And there are many people sitting here who must be making a lot of money through that. So you move from a lot of intermediaries are got disintermediated in the process. So there is a direct access and newer channels of digital production is actually becoming a common thing. The other side of it, you also speak about precision medicine, precision agriculture, genomics, and big data, where multiple sources of data coming together and the various IO technologies are also going to be a key thing as such. And this technology scope which widens can also have another ramification in development of the startups. We have 100 unicorns in this country, and most of them actually solves some of the perennial problems using adoption of a technology per se. And that is also going to provide a lot of job opportunities per se. So established companies who are driving the transformation, startups which are driving the transformation, newer sectors which are adopting it, all of them are actually bringing opportunities for us. And that also, along with that, the government's focus on Atmanirbhar Bharat, we wanted to have more self-reliance in these sectors is also going to be a huge opportunity for us. Specifically speaking, this also brings in jobs in specific areas. At a mass level, the data analytics, taking intelligence out of the data, either from the devices or from multiple sources, is going to be a key thing. From a very simple data cleaning job, to a larger level of data analyst job, specialized jobs, is actually the in thing. We used to say that in a field like journalism, for example, the need for a data journalist are actually on the increase. Because today, the good journalist piece actually require how do you actually analyze the data when you're preparing a story. So the World Economic Forum says that the data analyst, AI machine intelligence, big data, digital marketing, process automation, these are the areas which are actually going to be on the increase. But conventional, some of the service sector jobs like administrative jobs, conventional accounting jobs, etc., are actually going to be disrupted. We already know that many receptionists are being replaced by software bots. The conventional cognitive jobs, conventional jobs, service jobs, many of them are actually getting disrupted by that. In the medium level, you speak about business, financial services. We also speak about mobility and clean tech, areas in media and entertainment, and obviously in the manufacturing. Because manufacturing also, especially in the short run, when there is a huge pressure on, because of the inflation, there's a huge pressure on increasing the productivity, use of technology to boost it as actually on the rise. And the lower level, office work, administration, these are actually going to be on the wane person. Again, the World Economic Forum says that to lead this, we need to take a look at cognitive abilities to be enhanced. The system skills have to be enhanced, and complex problem-solving skills have to be enhanced. From a conventional model of education, which was only focusing on increasing the cognitive skills, we need to look at education systems which provide you the complex problem-solving skills by providing you opportunity to directly work in complex problems. So that is something which drives the skills of the future person. So let us, before we close, let me ask this: how do we lead this in this context? For that, we need to prepare for the future. Technology, be it digital or others, is like a knife. If you don't know how to use it, it will only cut you. It will bleed you. If you know how to use it, you can use it very, very effectively. Now, preparing the future is primarily on that. And if you look at throughout the Industrial Revolution, some part of the world always leads. It was through the first Industrial Revolution, it was Europe which led. Second Industrial Revolution, it was America and the US which has led. Third Industrial Revolution actually showed the emergence of China, Southeast Asia, and things like that, countries like that. Perhaps the fourth Industrial Revolution is the right place for Indians to excel, India to excel, provided we actually enhance our skills per se. So, one hand we have these opportunities coming in front of us. The other side, how do we actually adopt to do that per se? How do we prepare for us? We need to understand that technology is not only for people who have done engineering or who have done only technology courses. It's for arts, science, humanities, commerce, any of the fields of education. You have a possibility for change. When a digital university was formed, the first digital university was formed in India, in Kerala, it was, many people thought it was an online university. It is not an online university. It's a university which tries to transform people into the digital space person. I'm very happy that today, as part of the national education policy, we are speaking about this. You are doing a course on history. You can do along with that, you can do a course on data analytics, because even top institutions like IIT Madras is offering courses on data analytics, which anybody can take. So you have seen that we are moving to a world where digital is going to be an integral part. And specifically on the areas like big data analytics, artificial intelligence, additive manufacturing, and maybe a little bit more futuristic technologies, still adoption is happening, like blockchains. And it's also important that to enable your skills in complex problem solving, you need to observe, create, and experiment. That's basically where the college-based startups, etc., becomes extremely important. The industry 4.0 cannot be solved or cannot be mastered by industry 2.0 or industry 3.0 mindset. You really require a workforce of industry 4.0 mindset. How do you create that mindset is going to be the one which determine whether you'll be able to use this opportunities or not. And COVID actually made everybody an equalizer. It was a sort of an equalizer. Whether large or a small company, everybody is actually being on the same line. Now it's a time where we are actually starting the rise. If you can actually understand the new realities and augment our skills, definitely we can sit past as such. We know digital has disrupted many sectors. Digital has disrupted many of our lives in many ways. But I think we need to remember the lines which Paulo Coelho said, that not all storms always come to disturb your life. Some comes to clear your path. Perhaps the digital world is coming to clear our path to make us to the excel. Thank you very much for a patient listening. I'm sure that we will have a discussion after hearing Mr. Lee George. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Just before we hear from Shruti ma'am, I was wondering, just coming off of your presentation, I think for me the biggest theme takeaway was just change, right? The scope in which of change that has happened in the industry. Keeping that in mind, and especially because you are also an educator, could you tell us a little bit about how specifically maybe Digital University Kerala is equipping students for working in Industry 4.0? If specific courses, specific methodologies that you're bringing into the classroom, any of those things, if you could tell us a little about it.
Yeah, good point. See, if you look at technology life cycles, the time period of technology life cycle is actually shortening. No? It was around 200 years in the first wave, become 80, 100 years, 80, 10, etc. At the same time, we also used to hear that our youth is not employable and things like that, many cases. Now, at one end, when we say people are not employable, we also see that most of the top companies in the world are actually headed by Indians, right? And many strategic roles are actually being held by Indians. They all came from our education system. So there is a challenge there. The reason for this is, in the past, when an education institution prepare a person with knowledge, but not with the skills, and the skilling is actually done at the industry through their induction programs and other things. But when technology life cycles shrinks, industry don't have the luxury of keeping a person non-billable for a very long period of time. They actually want people to be billable on day one. So education institutions of today wants people to be billable on day one. That's what Digital University differentiates itself. Every student who comes here actually work on live projects, which is by us itself, because we take a very large projects with corporates, with government. We drive, in fact, the entire planning of the Kerala government runs on our solution. As I said earlier, the digital transformation in agriculture, animal husbandry is driven by us. So students get an opportunity to work on live projects. At the same time, they can earn also. So when they get into the industry, they not only have the knowledge, skills, but also know what are those nuances which industry looks at. Because industry also requires some specific nuances on working. All those things will be able to do it. And that is, I think, is maybe perhaps one of the things which our universities actually provide.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Shruti ma'am, I'll hand it over to you. If you could also tell us a little about what kind of stuff you work on. I don't think I could do justice to it. I looked it up and there was some really interesting, cool stuff. So it would be great to hear from you, and also the implication that your work has on sustainability itself. And then we'd like to hear your presentation.
Sure. Thanks, Anupriya. So my name is Shruti George. I am, my title is, I'm the VP of what we call the Strategic Innovation Platform around sustainability. What that really means is we're seeing sustainability as a business imperative for our company. And I'll talk about our company later, as well as a way for us to actually change the way we do business. So if you kind of look from now to 2050, a lot of countries, a lot of companies have talked about the need to become net zero. And the reason we're talking about net zero is because we need to keep warming of the climate down by around 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius for the world to be inhabitable by the 2100s. What that means is we've really kind of spent a lot of our time trying to see how do we actually improve our industrial footprint, and our environmental footprint overall. And a large part of this is actually enabled by digital. So if you kind of look into what McKinsey has been talking about, the imperative to be carbon zero by 2050 means that companies have to be investing around $9.2 trillion a year into upgrading their capital equipment, and around 6.5 million out of that's actually digitally enabled. So what Dr. Gopinath was talking about in terms of really looking at Industry 4.0, understanding how do you actually drive better ideas, more machine-human interactions, and kind of just everything being connected. And that's what I would like to talk to you about today, which is really around the ubiquity of digital identification. So really thinking about everything in your life, everything around you, and what if everything had a identification system. So that's kind of the upshot of what I want to talk about. A bit about me: I actually studied in Kerala. In the College of Engineering, Trivandrum. I was pretty close to it. I lived in Trivandrum a large part of my life. Then I studied at IIM Bangalore for 2 years, and then I moved to Europe in 2008, just before the global financial crisis. I've spent a bit of time around the world, kind of working in a lot of heavy industrials, which is kind of the bread and butter of what I do, which has nothing to do with what I studied. So it's quite fun for me to kind of talk about, again, things around digital, which is, I'm coming back to it from when I was doing my undergrad. But it actually is really true that you don't have to work in what you study and vice versa. So that's essentially what I do. I would love to kind of talk to you about what I'm excited about and what is interesting in our work. So just give me a minute and I'll try to figure out how to do this properly. Excellent. So as I said, I want to talk to you today about sustainability and circularity, and how you enable that with digital identity. So my company is Avery Dennison. Avery Dennison is the world's biggest label producer and the world's biggest RFID manufacturer. And it's one of these companies that nobody has heard about. It's actually a Fortune 500. So this is who we are. We are basically Avery. We're basically Avery Dennison. As I said, we are $8.5 billion of sales. We operate in 50 countries. We've got a very large presence across all of our business units in South Asia. So I'm actually including India, Bangladesh, and the area around as well. We've got almost 36,000 employees, and we are number 20 of Barron's top 100 most sustainable companies. We're very excited about really getting into the future of the the confluence of digital and physical. So really kind of driving that for the rest of the world as well. So what is digital identification and what is it that we do with that? We basically create a identification for everything, right? And what these technologies do is that it provides product history, it provides transparency, it provides tracking and inventory and kind of enabling better customer encounters. What that really means is that in the industry 4.0 context, when you're talking about supply chain transparency, RFID and kind of the digital identification aspect is one of the biggest drivers of it. So the ability for you to know where something was produced and where it's going, what is the carbon dioxide behind it, or even how do you use it, or what temperature you kind of see the product went through. And this is really kind of driving what is almost a buzzword, right? I mean, big data, kind of mass data, mass information, the whole idea around the Internet of Things. And that's kind of what we're driving. And ultimately, what this means is you're basically taking uncertainty away and creating more certainty. And that's essentially the underlying aspect of what we're trying to do here and what the industry is actually evolving to. What does this mean in terms of what our technologies look like? So we touched on RFID, but RFID is a relatively high technology product for us to be using to track things. If you look at what happened during COVID, QR codes became super ubiquitous, and I know they were already quite ubiquitous in Asia, but they became really popular in Europe and in the US, and that actually drove a large amount of uptake. So the conversation we've been having with tracking and monitoring things has gone from barcodes on your packet of biscuits to QR codes on your vaccination cards, to RFID tags, which I didn't know Dr. Gopinath was talking about cattle, but I was also told that we are the biggest manufacturer of tags on pigeons. So we're tracking pigeons across in the air, all the way to NFC, which is really kind of near field communication that you're basically adding on your phone, really consumer oriented. And if you kind of go more and more further down, printed electronics. So you're going away from having MOSFETs and small transistor to actually being able to print your electronics. And this is all really exciting for us. Underlying all of this, what you see here is something called Atma.io. I think for Indians, it's really easy to tell you what Atma is, but this is basically a software platform. It's a connected product cloud platform. And you can clearly see that there was an Indian who had this idea, because it's really coming from the deep spiritual idea of soul and the idea that this is the inherent understanding and the identity of a product. So Atma is really driving the digital identity of anything. So, and what this really means is when you have a digital ID, when you have different types of technologies, when you have the underlying product cloud underlying that, one packet of biscuits is not like another packet of biscuits. They both have a unique story to tell. They might have been produced in the same place, being packaged in the same place, but by the time they get into the hand of the consumer, they might have had a very different journey. And that's the journey you can actually track when everything has its own identification. What does that really mean? What are the products we buy could help us make the world more sustainable, right? What if our products could talk? What would you want them to say? So this is where I want a bit of your time and effort. So this is actually for me I'm asking you this question, which is, if you could interact with your product, what would you like to learn? I think they're going to put a poll up, hopefully. And please select your preferred option here. So A is trying to understand what the carbon footprint of the product is. B is actually trying to understand what the origin, the raw materials and the ingredients would look like. And this is becoming more and more important for more people. trying to understand, trying to understand what are more sustainable product alternatives. D, kind of trying to think about how do you care for your product, how do you resell it, how do you recycle it. And E is product authenticity. So is what the product that you've bought is that really real? Has there been some tampering? Is it a fake? And so on. So that's kind of what I would like to see. I don't know if there's a poll ongoing, but if there isn't, you can also just type it into your, yes, there's the poll. So just click on it and vote, please. I'll give it another 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Can we close the poll, please? There you go. Thank you. This is actually pretty interesting for me because you can kind of see how people are responding. So it's really around trying to understand the origin, trying to see if your product is authentic, and kind of trying to get more better product alternatives as well. Thank you for that. So let me ask you to do one more thing, which is, here's an example of a QR code of, and this is enabled, as I said, by Atma, right? So this is a practical example of what I was talking about, which is a digital identity. You can scan the QR code for a demonstration. And this is with one of our partners, Adidas. And essentially what this is to say, this QR code comes with this shoe. You scan it and you actually understand, what is going into the product. It tells you what you can do with it. It shows you what more can be done with the shoe itself, other than wearing it, obviously. So this is really the future of everything you have around you. This is the future we want to enable. And it really kind of drives information all the way from production all down to consumers and beyond. It's really kind of enabling what I like to call the cradle to cradle of everything. So instead of throwing things, you start actually looping them back, recycling them, reusing them. And that's essentially our way to a more sustainable future. So moving on, this is a shoe, right? But what if every product in your life could tell you its story? What would it say? Here's 2 examples. This is your food. This is what your food could say if everything had an identification. It could tell you where it was produced. It could tell you what journey it took, how far it is from its source. It could tell you how fresh it is, because it tells you via sensors how many times the temperature was checked. For a consumer, it can tell you what you can do, how you can access rewards, and kind of look at more ways to monetize your loyalty. And finally, for both producers and retail supermarkets and for consumers, it can tell you that your product has to be recalled. It can improve the inventories of supermarkets. This is what really your food would tell you if it could talk. What if your medicines could talk to you? Same thing. It would tell you what is the temperature that your medication is being stored at. It could tell you how many times the temperature has changed. It could really tell you that this medication is real and not a fake. And it would kind of talk about all of the safety and compliance discussions that we should be having, which is, have you taken the medicine safely? Is the medicine safe for use? And what is the certification around it? This is really what your medicine would tell you if it could talk. So this is kind of a few examples of what is enabled by digital identification, right? Let me now talk to you about what I'm most excited by, which is sustainability. So if there is a world where products can help us by directly interacting with us, they help us address the global challenges. And the biggest global challenge right now, obviously, is sustainability. Here's a measure of all of the net zero carbon pledges globally. So as you can see, there are cities, there are states, there are countries that have actually pledged to be carbon neutral anywhere between 2030 and 2050. This is how, you know, actually change is getting measured on the ground. But what we say as Avery Dennison and as a material science company is that you cannot actually cannot actually just make the pledge and say, yeah, it'll all be done. You really need to measure it because you need to manage what you're doing. And this to me is one of my favorite examples, right? So there is a shade of lipstick in MAC called Ruby Woo. Ruby Woo is the most popular lipstick in the world. And MAC, if you don't know, sells one lipstick every second. So, but in the time that I've been talking about this, around 30 lipsticks have been sold by MAC globally. And Ruby Woo is their biggest seller, right? The carbon footprint of all of Ruby Woo's production is around 300 kilotons, which is equivalent to actually a lot of companies. So you can see how big this is. What that means is if MAC actually doesn't estimate how much their production requirements are and actually overstocks this lipstick by just 5%, that is 15 kilotons of carbon dioxide in a year, which is a lot of carbon dioxide if you think about it. If you think about it, it's 223 cars worth of emissions, and it's 93 million liters of water. All of that equivalent to around what you can see there, which is Central Park. So it's the amount of carbon dioxide and water that Central Park requires, right? So this is really what it is. And one of the ways that Estee Lauder has been talking about enabling kind of inventory management and improving their forecasting efficiency is actually, for the next 5 years, is actually RFID. And RFID is it will help you kind of understand how much inventory do you hold, how much are you able to kind of keep, and what is the actual sales, and how do you think about stocking and restocking, right? This is this piece, which is supply chain transparency and kind of understanding how much your demand is of something and how much you are kind of driving production, is the biggest way for us to actually reduce the world's carbon footprint. And this is just one small example with one shade of lipstick by one company in the world. And let me give you one last example of what that looks like, right? So what that looks like for us in terms of enabling a net zero carbon world is actually to be measuring emissions at every touch point, starting from production all the way to actually you getting the product in your hand. This is a hoodie that has a QR code or an RFID tag, and it's produced in Guangzhou in China. And every time someone looks at it, we scan it. So when it gets scanned at the Central European DC, it's at 2.3 kilograms per carbon dioxide. By the time it gets unpacked in London in the shop, it's another 100 grams of carbon dioxide, and so on. And part of this for us, enabling the transparency and the measurement of carbon dioxide through the value chain, is also a way to educate customers about their own footprint. Dr. Gopinath talked about this whole idea around going away from globalization into localization, which is probably the best thing for the world as well, from a carbon and a responsibility standpoint. And one of the only ways we can actually think about that, both from a food and a garment and basically everything a touching point of view, is to kind of tell consumers about the choices they are making, right? What is the choice of having a banana in the middle of Sweden in winter? What is that choice in terms of carbon dioxide compared to having something that is much more readily available. So that's really what we want to be driving. This is really what is really exciting about my job, and what the company is doing, and what I can see as the future of the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think this is why I was kind of talking in the beginning about really pushing our boundaries of what we think digital work is, because there's so much going on. You don't you don't really immediately think that Mac has a team that's working on digital innovation or sustainability, right? So thank you so much for that. All right, so we're open to questions now. I can see a lot of questions already. I will take a few of those also, but as the questions come in, let me ask both of you something that popped up. I think both in the initial presentation, in the video, and when Dr. Gopinath presented, he did mention the inclusion of humanities and liberal arts subjects in digital and tech education. Can you, can both of you chime in a little about why is that important? Why is it important for someone who wants maybe a career in technology, that they also look at humanities and a liberal arts education? Why would those courses be now included in a technological education system? Any thoughts, Dr. Gopinath?
Yeah, I think technology is not complete unless you have the humanities part of it. And you take any of the applications of the technologies, there is a strong human element, social element included in that. And we are actually seeing a change in the behavior, something which I have not mentioned. But if you see in the digital world, the trust levels have changed. Now we are actually now start trusting strangers, right? So see, why are we taking an Uber car, which we don't know who is the driver, but somebody has rated him, and we don't know who has rated it, but if the rating is higher, we take that. So we actually started trusting people more than what we used to do in the past. In the past, we were only trusting centralized institutions. So there is a sociological change which is happening. So similar is the case with, if you look at digital marketing or digital behavior, there's a lot of psychological aspects which is involved in that. So when companies have to form strategies, companies have to develop technologies which aligns with what customers want, they actually need to have a holistic view. So all these disciplines becomes very important. And it's equally important that these discipline people also need to understand the technology, because many of the disciplines, like for example, medicine, for example, the amount of digital tools today a doctor uses is really, really large, right? So you see that from a conventional thought process, the newer world is actually very, very different. That's why this is not a tech subject anymore. It's actually a interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary world as such.
Thank you. Thank you, Anikrupa. So I think part of I think my education was that we were very focused on the single things that we're talking about. STEM is massive, right? I mean, if you're not an engineer or a doctor in India, you're not going to amount for anything. I'm seeing that change. I think even in India, where there's a lot more of inherent respect for humanities and arts. And commerce to that sense, right? And part of, I think, why these streams are really important, there's two things. Number one is that they provide context for the broader for broader work, and actually provide context for how the world's evolving, because it's very easy for people to sit and write code. Well, not easy, but there's a certain way about it, because you know what you're doing. But if you don't get the context behind what is happening around, then there is no meaning behind it, and hence you start seeing how companies become one dimensional, and they're really focused on a certain thing, and that really doesn't help anymore. People need to be multi-talented, and companies need to be multi-talented, because a company that's founded in the 1900s cannot survive in the 2000s being, static and not changing. And the second thing for me is actually from an overall problem and a problem-solving standpoint. It's very important for people when teams are forming, very specifically to have different viewpoints. And again, the mind of someone with a slightly more creative bent is often needed to problem solve effectively in teams. So that's the way I'm talking about it. And Dr. Gopinath was also talking about this initially, right? Which is going away from very one-dimensional problem solving to actually having the full scope, right? And being able to understand complex problems and complex solutions. And this is the way that a effective team can actually tackle huge problems, one small step at a time. But thank you. That's a fantastic question.
Yeah, I think just building on that, I'm also wondering what kind of advice would you give someone who's really from a non-science? Let's take me for example, right? MA English, or someone really from a totally non-science, hardcore humanities background, but someone who has a keen interest in working with technology, or has a keen interest in working in digital solutions, things like that. What can they do you think, to make that transition, whether it's in terms of increasing their skills, exposure, going into job interviews? What kind of advice would you give for someone like that? Go ahead, Shruti. Yeah.
Just go and do things. And I'm going to call out someone who actually is in the webinar and has been sending me a note. Our VP of Connected Products is actually, his name is Max Vinograd. He sits in Boston, and he has a BA in political science, but which has nothing to do with what he's doing right now, which is blockchain enabled supply chain tracking and everything that is that's really digital identity. And part of how he kind of did it was actually to go start found a startup when he was 22. That didn't work out, and then he joined us, and now he's kind of going all over the world, drinking and spouting the RFID Kool-Aid. So there is a bit of learning by doing that is really important, and that also helps you, again, to what Dr. Gopinath said, it's more of an apprenticeship model where you are, when you work, you actually figure out what are you good at and what do you drive. And in 10 years, nobody really cares what you studied. They only care what you're doing now and what you can actually add to the company's balance sheet and its products.
I'll add to that. On the other side, if you have literature, you are creative. I mean, you can actually use digital technologies to enhance your core vocation itself. In fact, a large number of content creation in the world actually happens in India. If you take top scientific publications, some of the Indian companies, Indian startups actually do most of the backend content creation, content editing. And that is very important because, like Shruti said earlier, context comes from the humanities background. So, and without that, you make a product, but you don't know how to actually communicate the product. That's very important, right? So there, the people with a different skill sets is very, very important. The only thing is, many times these stand away. I mean, they don't talk to each other. And that is the bridge we need to do. And that's why, in fact, almost every discipline has got a huge space in the digital age. And we need to actually start looking at how do we translate. And then the other side, what Shruti said is also valid. Then at that point, you will find that, there was an Indian company where the CTO is actually non-tech person. He's actually from a commerce field. It's a very big company. So what I mean to say is that once you get into that, then you found that your technology also is something which aligns with you, and then you may change your career also possible. But two ways. It enhances your existing vocation, or you can even look at how do you look at newer other opportunities also. Both is possible. Both are possible.
Yeah. I think to summarize, for anyone who's wondering if you're from a non-science, non-tech background, I think the key piece of advice there is to just do it. Just jump in, do the things that you need to read, to kind of clue yourself in. But beyond that, just do it, because the boundaries are really getting blurred nowadays. I think that's the big takeaway. All right. Another question that I had is also about entrepreneurship. People who want to be entrepreneurs. We kind of touched on that a little bit also now, but I'm thinking, what is the biggest change, or what is something that entrepreneurs are crucially required to do now that maybe was not so important 2 decades ago because of the way work is changing? Something that's just very important for someone who's looking to be an entrepreneur or start their own thing.
There's a very interesting book called Abundance. It's actually from the Singularity University. And the book says that one of the biggest power which digital age has brought in is actually to unlock a lot of resources which has been blocked with people. That's why it is abundance. So it's a simple example is Airbnb has unlocked a lot of houses, right? A lot of real estate, which was they have not created any new real estate. Nobody has actually built new buildings or anything like that. Existing buildings, the platform has unlocked. Uber did not create new cars; it only unlocked the existing cars. So the concept of why I spoke about abundance is that the biggest challenge many times entrepreneur faces is that he don't have the resources. That world is actually moved out. Today, it is possible for him to get resources at a very, very affordable cost. Many times it is free if he's actually using the digital tools or solving a problem using digital tools, a problem in real life using a digital tools. And because the technology is coming very fast, many of these things are available free of cost. You have semi-finished solutions available. You have interest groups which are available with supports. So the conventional entrepreneurship world, where you are only looking at land or labor and capital, from that we need to think about ideas being the key element of the new entrepreneurship per se, and other resources can actually come along with that. And that is also required because we really require a large number of people with innovative solutions. Shruti spoke about sustainability and global warming. It's a huge issue, right? If you look at SDG goals, each SDG goal is a big social entrepreneurship activity. So you have such opportunities available, and you can create companies by yourself. You don't need to really worry about too much of resources. Especially in India today, there is an ecosystem which allows you, which promotes you on the startup. Most of the states, the government of India also have got. So leverage on that. That's what my call on that.
So I think I think entrepreneurship 20 years ago was very, especially in India, is very different from what it is right now. And I think the piece that's really changed is the availability of finance. And you can kind of look at the unicorns we've had. I have classmates who've really founded anything from a unicorn to a few $100 million startups, right? And this was pretty inconceivable maybe 15, 20 years ago, because that finance hadn't been unlocked. And it's all the way, starting from microfinancing institutions and social finance, all the way up to kind of the big funds. What that really means is there's not been a easier time for you to start up right now. So if you have, as Dr. Gopinath said, if you have a good idea that actually changes the world, there's actually money you can find. And this is actually pretty critical. I think underlying that, the two capabilities I think are really required for anyone to start up. One would be, I think, a bit general, a business sense, right? Kind of have that, be a bit more savvy in how do you think about balance sheets and profit and loss statements and so on. Just get that, which is a hard skill. But I think the soft skill, which is getting more and more important, is ethics. And this is going back to the humanities piece, which is really learn really have that ethical and the moral part of the business, because there have been a few scandals of late in the Indian startup ecosystem. So I think there's really clearly a need to have ethics at the forefront of entrepreneurship as well.
All right, thank you. Dr. Gopinath, I have a lot of questions about, if you could talk a little bit about how does Digital University Kerala differ from other universities? What specific things do they have to offer to students who are thinking about the best place to go to study?
Yeah, as I said earlier, Digital University is not a virtual university. We are primarily a university focuses on courses which are helping people to migrate as well as lead in the digital world or digital age. So our courses are aligned to that, and we are a postgraduate and research university. So we don't have undergrad programs. We have only postgraduate programs. So whatever be your undergrad degree, you can actually look at the postgraduate option. So broadly, we have both MTech and MSc courses, and across 5 schools. The schools are one on computer science and engineering, which looks at AI, blockchain, connected IIoT systems and related aspects. Then we have a school of electronics, which looks at the hardware part of it, especially intelligent AI hardware and related aspects. Then we have a school of informatics, which focuses on how do you apply digital technologies in various fields. So we have agri-informatics, ecological informatics, we have developmental informatics and related areas. Then we have a digital science school, which use digital into the science field. So that's where computational science, bio AI, which is a new area where how do you look at AI in the biospace and related aspects. Then we have a school of digital humanities and liberal arts, which looks at a technology MBA and other related. We are coming out with the in economics, sociology, and all courses in the days to come. We also have looking at journalism and media studies also from that context. That is not there currently, but it will be coming. But in addition to that, we also have short-term programs which are offered more through online medium on the newer technologies, because we have a very large bouquet of courses in blockchain technologies, and all of them are actually being certified by industry bodies. But more than the course title and the content, as I said, the process is also very different, where the students have direct access to live projects while they are working. They can earn while they learn in their 2-year curriculum. So that actually helps them to be industry ready on the day one itself in a true sense. So that is what Digital University do, and they can work with a lot of large social projects also. So this point which Shruti mentioned about ethics is something which is very, very core to our value system. And that's why we ensure that the students get engaged with the society and understand that the real challenges are there to be addressed when they are actually moving into a digital age. So this is primarily what we offer. We also have a PhD program where we give, the PhD program is completely free because we provide them the scholarships, and the university has also got a very different model. The university is actually creating its own revenue through large research projects and development projects. So because of that, we are able to provide almost free education it's completely free education at the PhD level, almost free education for a large number of people at the postgraduate level also. So that's the key differentiator which the university is trying to attempt.
Amazing. I think just one follow-up question there. Can you maybe tell people a little about what areas of study are available for the PhD program? I saw a couple of questions.
Oh yeah, PhD programs. See, the PhD programs we have, they can, whoever is interested can actually work in one of the schools. That is, in each of the schools, I've got a finer elements. Say, for example, data analytics, geospatial data analytics, AI, machine learning, natural language processing, computer vision, then ecological informatics. I think we are one of the very few universities in the country which focuses on ecological informatics and developmental informatics. These sort of areas are there. Plus, we have large research centers. We have a research center in newer material called graphene. So, which is first research center, center of excellence being set up by Government of India in the country, and this is with the partnership with Tata Steel. So the people who are interested in this 2D materials and related things can actually take a PhD program in that school. We similarly have a large center of excellence in IoT. So again, people who are interested in that can do it. We prefer people more into the applied research field, not necessarily basic science field, but we also have research areas in drug design and computational drug design and all. So that's also areas which we need to look at. Again, we can look at the website. The individual faculty's interest is what drives many times the PhD programs. That is something which we can look at. And this is selected through a national level examination if they are not already qualified through one of the national level examinations. Then they can take a national level examination which we provide.
Awesome, thank you. There was an interesting question about freelance work. I think, of course, we know that certain types of work are very traditionally freelance. Marketing, content writing, all of those things are quite easily, bend themselves to freelance. But there was a question about, could there be a future for freelance work in sustainable supply chain management or slightly less traditional freelance industries? Shruti, George, any thoughts there?
Yes. So first of all, I think the future of work is remote, and the future of work also should be how you want to do it. So in general, there is a massive need for people who understand sustainability in supply chain, because what you're seeing is that most companies have an ambition that their current capabilities cannot match. So there's really a need for people to understand, how do you do supplier management? How do you look at logistics in a more sustainable fashion? How do you kind of create the framework around it? How do you track and monitor it? So number one, there is absolutely a requirement for professionals in this space. And this is absolutely a skill that most people who are experienced in supply chain can actually pick up. And then I think the second piece around the remote working, yes. So freelancing should absolutely and will absolutely be one of the ways that you can drive this. It's just a question of finding the companies that are in the right life cycle of this specific question.
I'll just add on to that with an example of a company in India which has actually looked at freelancing or remote working, not exactly freelancing. Once you can do remote working, then you can get into freelancing also. In the recent past, it's actually a hardcore manufacturing company and what they did was, during this COVID time, and that they are now continuing, is that they created a digital twin. And the moment you are on a digital twin, you can actually remotely work from anywhere. So the newer technology, you see, this is conventionally what people were doing is they were sitting in a control room or they were sitting in a field, shop floor, and they were doing things, especially in the maintenance jobs and things like that. Today, they actually sit in a remote location and do it. So even that's a very, very conventional industry, which conventionally not being thought that you can do remote work, but it actually they have proved it is possible. So over the years, with enhancement of IoT, where machines communicate, enhancement of robots, and you have better communication technologies, you will actually see that many of these conventionally physical jobs where physical presence was required, they will actually become amenable to remote working. And that is something which that's what the predictions and many of the studies also speaks about.
Yeah, thank you. There were also a couple of questions. We talked a lot about, I think, students and things that they should keep in mind, people who are starting off their career. There were a couple of questions about people who are ahead in their career, maybe mid-career professionals, people who are much further down. Let me pitch that question directly to both of you, since it's been a few years since both of you have started your careers, but still very much working in fields which are changing very quickly. What are some of the things you do to kind of stay on top of things, stay updated, stay ahead of the game? Any habits that you formed, mindsets that you've adopted, that you would give as advice to anybody here who has questions about, okay, I'm kind of 10 years, 15 years into a career, and what if I want to switch now? What are some things that you've done that have helped you kind of stay on top of things?
So see, personally for me, I have actually changed my career multiple times. I started as a mechanical shop floor engineer, moved to completely different process engineer, then moved to become a technical faculty, then moved to a management faculty, gone into an administrative. So I think many people today don't stick to a single career forever. They keep on changing and they keep on adopting it. And also it's important to keep your radars on, because there are some technologies which will completely disrupt the things.
Mm-hmm.
So, blockchain, for example, if it really comes in real big way, many of our accounting methods will completely change. So the person who has created a career in that need to be really really concerned about how do I move to a distributed finance or a decentralized finance from a conventional centralized finance. So that's a challenge today, that we need to continuously update it. But the positive thing is that the amount of courses available, the amount of support available is huge. You can actually be a part of any top university in the world almost free of cost today, because most of the universities have made their courses available free of cost for it to access. So the learning space is also has improved substantially, and it helps you to update continuously. I would say that everybody should actually do at least every year one course from Coursera or edX to keep yourself updated on the area which you are working on, so that you basically will be at the cutting edge of what's happening.
Yes, so I have I've been working for 14 years. So I don't know if it's really mid-career yet, but approaching that. And over time, I've basically had two big career changes. I used to be a consultant. I did that for 9 years. And then now I am in this company for 5 years. But even during those times, I did way too many things. And part of what really drove that was actually this lifelong curiosity. I'm probably one of the more curious people that at least my mother knows. And this is true from when I was very young. And I have never let that go, because it's helpful for me. And I think that is really that really helps you to kind of say, how do you pick up new ideas and new topics and kind of go forward from there. That being said, there is always a bit of the older you get, there's always this bit of like, well, some of these technologies are too newfangled for me to understand. And I refer especially to TikTok. So there's always things that you will say, okay, this is not something that I can really understand, but there are always, even when things change, there will be places that you feel comfortable to gravitating towards. And that's what I would say. I think the two things is just one, try and understand what the new things are and figure out if you're comfortable working in that context. And then second is never stop learning and kind of never let your curiosity go. So I think those are the two things I would say.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. I think for the audience, if you're, I hope that we've done a good job to some extent to kind of break what you thought we were going to talk about, what career opportunities in digital age really look like. And I really hope that our conversation today has pushed some of those boundaries, made you, I think, explore things that maybe not considered before, think about working in the digital age, working in the years to come in a way that maybe you had not considered before. So, and if we have done that, I think me and our panelists will consider our job this evening well done. For anyone who still has any specific questions about Digital University Kerala, I would encourage you to take a look at their website. There is a lot more information on there. It's duk.ac.in, if I'm not right.
That's right.
That is the website. If you have any specific questions about the postgraduate programs, anything about the PhD programs, what are their different departments, please take a look at the website. All the information should be there. With that, we will sign off. Thank you so much, audience. Panelists, thank you so much. This has been great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Shruti. Thank you, Anikrupa. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gopinath, Anukrupa. Thanks. Bye.